Hey guys, welcome into tonight's video. I say tonight, like it may be today for you. I don't know. It's night for me when I'm filming this. Tonight we're going to be talking all about drugstore dupes. These are all things that I already had in my collection, and I started to get an overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, I had these products already, and I could easily tell that some of them were at an affordable price point. So I want to give you guys a rundown on all of these, how they each perform, how they're similar. I will tell you guys which ones I prefer, because in some cases I actually don't prefer the drugstore version over the high-end version. Some of these are some oldies but goodies. Some of these are fairly new. So let's just hop right into it. We'll go through them all. Starting off with primers, we all know the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip has really had a lot of hype around being like a sticky, grippy primer. But one primer that has won, I think, the Drugstore Allure Best of Beauty for 2022 was the Hard Candy Sheer Envy Hydrating Primer. These are so similar. They're not only similar in the way that they perform, but they're similar in consistency, they're similar in texture, they're even similar down to color. It is a product known for being kind of a green shade, and the Hard Candy one definitely comes in a tint of green as well. I honestly think that the Hard Candy one performs just the same as the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip. When I use these, I don't notice a single bit of difference. I like them equally, and I think that they perform very similarly, so much so that I don't think it's worth paying the higher price point for the Milk Hydro Grip. I think the Hard Candy Sheer Envy Hydrating Primer is honestly a better option if you're somebody that really likes the grippy kind of primer. I do have another primer. I actually have a couple of primers in this video. The next set of primers I have is the First Aid Beauty Coconut Skin Smoothie Priming Moisturizer. You guys wouldn't believe how many times I had to retake that because I couldn't say it. This one here is very similar to a very recent release from the drugstore. This is Flower Beauty's Skin Smoothie Radiant Glow Primer. Flower Beauty actually did release 3 versions of her Skin Smoothie Primer. One is a Hydro Pop one, another one is a mattifying one, but I think this one most similarly resembles the First Aid Beauty one. I didn't actually think of this when I first bought this. I just thought this looked like a really nice primer. I like something that's a little bit radiant, and immediately when I bought it, I could tell that it had a light pink shade to it, which I know is very similar to the First Aid Beauty one. So I pulled this out, tested it against the First Aid Beauty one. They're both slightly glowy primers. I think that they're similar in consistency. I do think that the First Aid Beauty one is a little bit thicker. Flower Beauty one is a little bit lighter in its formulation. I think the glow on the First Aid Beauty one is actually a little bit more radiant, and I think that they give the same effect once you apply the foundation. And I think that's probably the biggest payoff for me, is not just how they look with no makeup on top of them, but how do they perform with makeup on top of them. I think Flower Beauty was definitely targeting the First Aid Beauty Skin Smoothie Primer because it's a pink hue, and I think that that's a very unusual thing to do. I think the naming is just very similar. They're both called the Skin Smoothie Primer. I think Flower Beauty was intentionally putting out a product that was a dupe for the First Aid Beauty Skin Smoothie one. I actually do prefer the First Aid Beauty one just a tad bit more. I don't think that they make that much of a difference, but I do think that the Skin Smoothie Priming Moisturizer from First Aid Beauty is a little bit more hydrating of a formula. It's just a little bit thicker in consistency, and it has a teeny tiny bit more glow to it. So I think that they're both good, and I think that if you wanted to get a comparable product that worked very similarly, if First Aid Beauty one was one that you really enjoyed using, I think the Flower Beauty one is a really good dupe. I just happen to prefer this one just a little bit more. So that's my vote on that one. I do have another primer. You guys, this one is more of a glowy primer. It's the new release from Kosas. This is the Glow IV Skin Enhancer. And I started to think as I put it on, like I already have a product that's very similar to this that I actually just tried for the first time very recently, which was the L'Oreal True Match Lumi Glotion. They both definitely have shades to them. They're tinted, they're not completely sheer, but I think the Kosas one actually leaves my skin a little bit more metallic. It's a bit of a stickier formula. It's a little bit of a tackier formula. I think the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion is a little bit better of a product because it's not so thick and sticky. I don't think either of them mess up the application of my foundation, but honestly, the consistency and the way that they feel applied and how they look on bare skin, I prefer the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion. And because they're in very similar packaging, I honestly believe that Kosas was trying to duplicate the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion. So my vote is on this one, the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion. You guys, I think you can save your money on the Kosas. I think it was just a little bit too metallic for me. I don't know that a lot of people are liking this, and they're all saying kind of the same thing, that it does look metallic. I think that I've heard that word used to describe this product several times, not even having seen reviews before I tested this product. So my vote is, if you want something that's a skin enhancing glowy product for under your foundation, I would go with the L'Oreal Lumi Glotion. The next product, you guys, this is not gonna be the first time you've heard this. This is all viral and going on all over. The next one that I have is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, and it's going to be against the e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter. So I just have the mini in this one. I wish I had the bigger size so you could see how absolutely similar even the packaging is, but there's no way that e.l.f. wasn't going after Charlotte on this one. They even called it the Halo Glow Liquid Filter to Charlotte's Hollywood Flawless Filter. We know that this was kind of an unmatched product at the time from Charlotte, and when e.l.f. came out with this, everyone couldn't help but notice how absolutely similar this product was. I did not try the e.l.f. product until very recently, and so while I knew that they were going to be very similar, I hadn't actually tried them side by side until I filmed this video tonight, and I can tell that they perform very similarly, but I actually believe that Charlotte has a little bit more glow than the e.l.f. one does. I actually like them for different reasons. I prefer the Charlotte Tilbury one as an over top the foundation highlighter, where I think the e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter is actually really beautiful under the foundation, and I don't prefer it on top of my foundation as a highlighter. So just depending upon how you want to wear this product, they are very, very similar in shade. I have the lightest shade in both of them, but I do believe that I prefer them both for different reasons. So I know that's not super helpful, but if you weren't someone that has ever tried the Charlotte Hollywood Flawless Filter, then you can probably save your money, because I think this is a very, very similar product. I just think the Charlotte is a little bit more glowy, so just depending upon how you like to use them. But I can tell you, I could live without the Charlotte if I had the e.l.f. in my life. So I'm gonna go through these as I applied them to my face. So the next one that I did was eyeshadow primer. One of my favorite primers is the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. I just have a mini in this one. I've used up my full one and I had a mini, so no need to repurchase. It takes so long to get through these. But I actually bought an Essence primer recently and didn't realize again that it was probably a dupe that was very intentional. This was the Prime Like a Boss eyeshadow base. They're both in purple packaging. The Urban Decay one is actually one of my favorite eyeshadow primers for like a barely there, very silicone-y, very soft, almost like a cream to powder formula that actually doesn't like make my eyeshadows skip, and it doesn't provide too much coverage. So this one from Essence is very, very similar. I picked it up because it was a very new release in January, but I didn't realize that it was going to be so similar to the Urban Decay until I put it on, and I was like, wow, this is very, very similar, both in like the universal shade or just how light it was. The very similar consistency. It almost feels kind of like silicone-y going on, and it feels to that like cream to powder formula, and they feel exactly the same lightweight kind of consistency. So honestly, I'm gonna lean towards the Essence Like a Boss eyeshadow primer. For its price point, I don't think that you need the Urban Decay. I think they are so similar in the way that they perform that the Essence is just a better way to go. We know that Essence is a very affordable product, so my vote goes to the Essence Prime Like a Boss eyeshadow primer. I do not have a foundation that I'm putting up against each other, so we'll move on into concealer. These are both oldies but goodies. They are just so similar in both packaging and the way that they perform that I almost feel like whichever one came out after the other one was duping it. So not sure exactly which was released before the other, but the first one that I have is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. You guys can probably already guess what I'm gonna pair it up against, and it is the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer. Not only are these two very similar in packaging, they perform almost identically. They're very lightweight in formula. They're both very creamy. They offer like a light to medium coverage. They're just so similar that I almost couldn't tell you which one I was applying if I didn't notice the packaging. I can say though, sometimes the NARS can be a little bit drier of a formula and can tend to crease on me when I go in with multiple layers. Sometimes I try and build this up and I notice, ooh, that's like too much, and it will start to crease. Whereas I don't actually notice that with the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer. So if I had to vote on this one, honestly, I love them both, but I'm gonna give it to Maybelline Fit Me. I think if you have this, you don't need this. They just perform too similarly to really make a difference, except for your wallet. So let's dive into some contours next. There are some new releases here that you probably won't be surprised to see. So the first one up that I'm gonna talk about is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Contour Wand, and I'm gonna pair it up against the Flower Beauty Lowlight Liquid Contour. I know there have been many companies out here recently making very similar products. Tarte Sculpt Tape is one of them, which I am going to talk about, and then Milani also put out a contour one that is very similar, but I and pairing these two together, very specifically in the lightest shade for fair to medium in Charlotte, and I'm going to pair it up against the Flower Beauty contour in the deep shade. One of my complaints with the Charlotte is that it was actually too deep of a shade for someone who had fair skin. I usually got a kind of muddy look that I felt like I always had to extra blend in. Like I had to be very careful, otherwise the application didn't look very good. When I picked up the Flower Beauty ones, I could easily tell that the lightest shade in her liquid contour wasn't going to be a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury. So I did pick up all three shades. In terms of consistency, they're both very, very similar. In terms of shade, they're both very, very similar. I would say that the Flower Beauty tends to dry down just a little bit quicker than the Charlotte, so you do have to work a little bit faster. But for shade comparison, in both of these, they're very, very similar. They're both very neutral, very deep contour shades. So my vote is actually gonna have to go to the Charlotte. Extra time that it takes to dry down, so I get a little bit more time for like blendability, but I'm gonna have to give it to Flower Beauty if it comes to price point and how it actually ends up looking on the skin. I think for the first time in making a dupe, Flower Beauty was the first one to really nail the neutral deep shade. The other two that I'm gonna talk about here, you guys, they are more like bronzers than they are contours. I think when we're talking about a contour that is like a straight duplicate for like the shade is actually the Flower Beauty in deep. So I'm gonna have to give it to Flower Beauty for the price point and overall performance, but Charlotte is nice because it's a little bit easier to blend in. Let me show you the shades that I did not swatch in the cutaway. This one is in medium, and then this one is in light for the lightest of skin tones. And I think the light one is actually very neutral. I think the one in medium has a little bit of warmth, and the deep again is very, very neutral, but just much more similar to Charlotte's fair to medium contour. So here are the shades. This is light, this is medium, this is deep. And just for comparison's sake, I'm gonna throw up the Charlotte next to the Flower. There's the light, there's the medium, there's the Flower Beauty deep, and then there's the Charlotte fair to medium. So that's why I think that these two are much more matched in terms of tone, and I think that's the only real like important thing when you're making a dupe is like, is it an actual duplicate even if it performs differently? And in this case for contour, the shade is the biggest deal, right? Like we are not looking for a liquid bronzer, and we're very specifically looking for a liquid contour. So I think that these are too similar to spend as much as Charlotte is charging for the wand, and you actually get a tiny bit more product in the Flower Beauty one by 0.07 ounces. So, you know, not a huge difference, but still it's more and it's a lot less money. So I'm gonna have to give it to the Flower Beauty if you're really into those like liquid contour wands. However, I have tried both the light and the medium, and I think that they're beautiful. I think they also work for my skin tone. I think this is a really good shade for light, and I like using the medium as a bronzer. I liked that there was 3 as opposed to just 2 in the Charlotte Tilbury line. All right, let's talk about Tarte Sculpt Tape Contour. So I think that this was trying to dupe the Charlotte Tilbury because they have also come out with their blush wands that are very similar to the Charlotte's blush wands, but I don't think that this did as good enough of a job. I'm gonna do a little bit more swatching here. This one is the Charlotte contour, and then here is the Tarte. I think they're two different in tone. Here's Tarte and here's Charlotte. I think when I blend this Tarte Sculpt Tape out, it looks more like a bronzer because it's lighter and it also has some warmth in it. This one is in soft bronze, which I do believe is the lightest shade. So while I don't think that this was a direct dupe for the Charlotte, what I do think is very, very similar in tone and application is the Milani Conceal and Perfect Liquid Contour. So I think that they could have done a better job in pricing to make it a dupe. This one is $35, and I think the Charlotte retails for $40. It might be $42 at this point. So it's a little bit less expensive, but I just don't think the tone is well enough matched to be a contour. I really do believe this should be a bronzer. And I think the same thing for the Milani Liquid Contour. I think that this shade is more like a bronzer than it is a contour. So I think the Milani is more of a dupe, the Tarte Sculpt Tape. There is the Milani. So you can see it's a pretty light tone. I just don't think it's dark enough to kind of be a contour. And I think it looks more like a bronzer and just has a little bit warmth on the cheeks. Honestly, I really enjoy the Tarte Sculpt Tape, and I think it has like a little bit of warmth in it, like a little bit of red when I blend it out. I think it really does make my cheeks look kind of sun-kissed. Having both of them, they do different things in my collection, but if you're not somebody who prefers like a red undertone in their bronzer, which I personally do because I'm very fair-skinned, but if you didn't, my vote then goes to Milani. So I had a ton of different blushes, and so I couldn't throw them all in for try on, but I definitely have some here that I might be stretching it just a little bit. There are 4 blushes here, so hang in there with me, guys, and hear me out on this. I love the Melt Cream Blush Lights. This one is in Honey Thief. I adore these. I think they are so good. They're just my kind of formula. They're very emollient, they're very pigmented, super easy to blend out, but they last a super long time. And then more recently, Profusion, I think they launched a bunch of new products. They even just did a new release, and I picked those up as well. But this was a fairly new release, and this was a cream blush called Bestie, and I think this is still listed as new on their website. The Melt Blush Light is very creamy to the touch. It's very easy to apply and blend in. I think the Profusion is a little bit stiffer of a formula, but once they're applied to the cheeks, they look almost identical. And the Profusion is honestly a fraction of the cost. I don't see any difference. They have the same amount of pigmentation, they have the same amount of blendability, the finish looks the same. Profusion does a bang up job in a lot of their quality. So I know this one might be kind of a stretch because they're not exactly the same. I think that if you didn't touch these, if you saw these on my cheek and how long that they lasted, you couldn't tell which one I was using. So as much as I love the Melt Cream Blush Lights, I have to give it to Profusion. They just do a bang up job, and they keep their stuff really affordable. The next one, you guys, is a stretch. Like, I stretched this one. This one for sure is not exactly, like, we're not in drugstore territory anymore. This blush is the Dior Rosy Glow blush. This one is in the popular pink shade. I'm not as huge of a fan as like everyone is with this, because it just has like a very purpley undertone. It's a very pinky blush. I usually stay away from very pinky blushes. I do notice that a lot of people recently have been saying that the Too Faced Cloud Crush blush in Candy Clouds was a dupe. I actually picked this shade up long before I heard people start talking about this. My video was like posted, and then people started saying like this particular color was a dupe, and by the time a lot of people started looking for the shade, it was like the only one that was sold out. I got the Pinker Times Ahead collection pretty early when it released. I don't think these are exact dupes. I just want to mention this. I think the Rosy Glow one from Dior is a little bit more purple, has more pigment than this one. The Dior one is a longer lasting blush. So honestly, if you're an addict of the Dior Rosy Glow, I don't think you're gonna find a dupe in the Candy Clouds one from Too Faced. The Dior one is just more pigmented. I think this is a nice flush of color. I just prefer something darker, and because this has more of a purple undertone, it's a little bit deeper of a shade, I do prefer this one. This one does retail for $40, and this one is $29, and so there is a little bit of a difference. We're just not in drugstore territory here. So I just thought I would throw that one in there. The next one that I have is a quite obvious dupe. Like, there's just no way it wasn't intended to be a dupe. The high-end product that I have is the Play Bento Stack from Kaja. This one is in the shade Butter Up, or Color Story Butter Up, and the one I'm pairing it against is the Ulta Beauty Cheek Squad. They're even placed the same. The colors and the Color Story are very similar. The difference here is that the Kaja is only cream in the bronzer, and it has a powder highlighter and a powder blush, whereas the Cheek Squad from Ulta, these are all cream products. The color of the bronzer, the color of the blush, and the color of the highlighter are almost all identical. They both only come in 2 color stories or 2 shades. I always thought it was quite unusual that Kaja stacked it with the blush, the highlighter, and then the bronzer. And when I got the one from Ulta, the one from Kaja didn't immediately stand out in my mind until I started to think about it and how it was stacked with the blush, the highlighter, and then the bronzer. And I thought, that's weird. I have another product that does that. Why do companies do that? Oh wait, I think Ulta was really trying to dupe the Kaja stack. Honestly, I give it to the Ulta. I hands down prefer having all cream cheek trio as opposed to 1 cream product and then 2 powder products. I just find that's a little inconsistent. I thought it was a little strange. I think they're both really, really good toned bronzers. I think they're both very easy to apply, but the Ulta one is just a little bit more creamy, and the price point, such a big difference. I hands down give it to the Ulta one. I really enjoy this. The Kaja one I could live without. I think Ulta did a better job with their formulation. If you guys haven't tried this and you're a fan of these Kaja stacks, this is one to pick up and definitely pair against this one. I prefer this 5 times as much for formulation, consistency, blendability, price point. Yeah, Ulta gets it. Okay, so the final blush that I have is from Kulfi. This is a new release. This is also a new brand that came into Sephora. This is called the Mendy Moment Blush. This is a cream blush. This one is in the shade Garland Glow. So it's kind of like an orangey shade. And when I bought it, I wasn't sure what the consistency was gonna be like, but as soon as I applied it, when I was doing a testing new makeups video, I could tell it was totally the exact same formula as a blush that I already have in my collection. This is a K-Beauty brand. They do sell these on Amazon, so it's not exactly like drugstore, but it is drugstore pricing because this one retails for $8. This is the iMeme Pet Balm. You guys, these are the exact same formula. They are both a whipped consistency. They are both very full coverage, long lasting, staining blushes on the cheeks. They apply almost exactly the same. They last exactly the same amount of time. The shade range is different though. Kulfi does come in pretty vibrant shades, but the iMeme comes in very like deep shades. There's not a lot of similarities in the shade ranges that these come in, but the formula is almost identical. Honestly, I think these are both good. I like having these in my collection. I think they're both great products. I think they both perform really well, but the iMeme is a fraction of the cost. So if you like this kind of formula, skip the Kulfi, you can use the iMeme. Let's move on into highlighters. I only have one highlighter. This is gonna be an obvious dupe, but I'm gonna first bring up the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Beauty Light Wand. This is actually gonna go against two liquid highlighters, which were very obviously trying to dupe this product, which was the Flower Beauty Spotlight highlighter and the Milani liquid highlighter. These are all in different shades, so they were not gonna get a shade match, but they were obviously for application purposes duping the Charlotte Tilbury one. They're all very light reflecting. They're all a very thin formula. They all apply very similarly, but the one from Flower Beauty has the same tendency as the liquid contour, which is it dries down pretty quick, doesn't give you as much time to work with it. So depending upon how you apply it, it can look a little bit patchy. I think the Milani is probably pretty light overall, not as illuminating as the other two products. In this particular case, obviously you can see the shades are very different. The one in Charlotte I have in Pillow Talk, which is a pinky shade. The one in Flower Beauty is an Opal, which is like a champagne-y, and then I have the Milani one in Lunar, which is like a gold shade. So I actually like the fact that I have different shades in my collection and that they're very similar products. But in this case, I prefer the Charlotte highlighter over the other two. I think it's easier to blend out. I think it's more emollient. You get a little bit more dry time on it. And I think it's a little bit more light reflecting than these products. So in this case, I don't prefer drugstore over high end. I have one mascara here, you guys, and it is for sure an obvious and very intentional dupe. So the first one that we have is the Benefit Roller Lash, and it is up against the e.l.f. Lash and Roll. Again, similar packaging, very similar naming. This is a very new release from e.l.f. They have very similar plastic brush wands. They're both very similar in kind of a little light application that they give, but I honestly prefer the Benefit Lash and Roll. I think it offers more pigmentation than the e.l.f. one. I think that I go in with the e.l.f. one twice as much as I do with the Benefit one. I think that they're both like lengthening and just very light and fluffy. I don't think that they have a lot of pigmentation in their formula at all. I don't think that they're intended to be very volumizing, more a lengthening formula than anything, but the e.l.f. one makes me work hard, and so it's actually not a mascara that I enjoy. I think that it takes a lot for me to build it up, and it just doesn't have enough pigmentation for my liking. I think the Benefit did it better. So in this case, again, we are down to a situation where I prefer the Benefit Roller Lash. I have 4 lip products. So the first one that I have is the Givenchy Plumping Lip Gloss. This one is in the shade 001 in Rose Perfecto, and I'm gonna put it up against the Revolution Ceramide Lip Swirl. When this released from Makeup Revolution, everyone was saying, oh, it's a dupe for the Givenchy. I do believe that Makeup Revolution was very intentionally trying to dupe the success of the Givenchy. I think they were intending to duplicate the formulation in the swirl. Not a lot of companies have done swirls or swirls very similar to this. Now I kind of see like a lot of companies coming out with very swirled lip glosses, and so it's becoming very popular. But I'm gonna tell you right now, this Makeup Revolution can go in the trash. It is chunky and thick and sticky and gross. It applies patchy. I dislike this so much. I will not keep this in my collection. The Givenchy is just 10 times better. It's like a very light and airy plump. It's soft. So whether or not they intended to like dupe it like exactly, because the packaging isn't like perfectly similar, like this is short and stubby, this is long. It's just something that people had talked about that was very similar, but honestly, I don't think that they're exact dupes, and the Givenchy is way better than the Makeup Revolution. This is just sticky, nasty. It's so gross. I don't even wanna like put it on. I put this on in like one video and it was so gross and goopy that I will not be wearing this again. So this is garbage. If this was meant to be a dupe, you guys totally can skip it. The next one that I have is the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lip. It's up against the Flower Beauty Plump Up Gloss Stick. I believe that because they're very similar in packaging, that Flower Beauty was intentionally trying to dupe the success of this, but I don't think that they're identical dupes. The Tarte is just much more glossy. It's much thicker of a consistency. I actually only do have my Tarte in just the Juicy Lip. I don't have the plumping version, where this one from Flower Beauty is the plumping version. The Flower Beauty is very beautiful and it's a very, very light formula, but it doesn't offer the same kind of gloss that the Tarte one does. The Tarte one is just thick and has more pigmentation, and like it's just a very, very thick gloss, and it's almost so thick sometimes that I don't like how thick it is. And so when I'm trying to move quickly, I would prefer something like the Flower Beauty. I think they intended to dupe it, but in this case I just think that it's too different to really put up against each other. I think that the Tarte just is so much more glossy and noticeably glossy than the Flower Beauty one that they can't be identical dupes. So I like them both for different reasons, and I don't think that they're perfect dupes, even though I think they intended to be. The next ones that I have are lip oil. So the first one that I have is the Clarins Comfort Lip Oil. This one is in the shade 08 Strawberry, and I'm gonna put it up against the new release from NYX. This is the Fat Lip Drip Oil. I don't think these intended to be exact dupes. I think what NYX was doing was like duplicating the success of lip oils, and so that's why they put this out. They do a bang up job on their lip products, and so when I got this shade, this one is particularly in the shade Newsfeed, I could tell that it was very, very similar to the one that I already had from Clarins, and this one did win Allure Best of Beauty for 2022. I think that they're both damn good lip glosses. Honestly, I think the Clarins one, when I purchased it, I got it to test the stuff that won Allure Best of Beauty, but when I went to place the order, I was like, that's the price for this lip oil? Like, dang, it doesn't have that much product in it, and it was really, really expensive. So when I picked these up at $9 a pop, I thought this is a really, really good deal. So I picked up 3 shades and wanted to try like a clear one. I got one that was orange and then the shade in red. And then I noticed that this was very, very similar to the Clarins one. They're both very, very beautiful. I think they look almost identical on the lips. I think that the NYX one offers a little bit more pigmentation than the one from Clarins, and so they're not exactly identical. I can tell when I have them on my lips side by side which one is which, but I think that you can save your money, and I think you can purchase the NYX one. I think that if you're looking for a good lip oil, I think that NYX did a really, really good job on their lip products. Like I said, NYX does a fantastic job on most of their like lips and lip liner formulations, that I think you can skip this one because I think this one does just the same thing. The next one I have is the final one. This is one of the NARS lipsticks, and this is in the satin formula, and I'm gonna have to put it up against another brand new release. This one is from e.l.f. This is their O Face satin lipsticks. You guys look at the packaging. How is e.l.f. not intentionally duping the crap out of brands? And they just do it so well. When I picked this up, I wasn't sure that like what kind of packaging it was gonna be, but it's a soft matte black, and I thought, I have one just like that. Why does this look so similar to my NARS? And then I realized, oh my gosh, this is a very intentional dupe. In fact, I even think the naming was intended to be a dupe. It's the O Face satin lipstick, where NARS is very famous for their orgasms. I mean, you can draw the parallel there. Like, it's not hard. And when I tried it on, I was like, wait a minute. They even have a shade in their line from NARS that's very similar. The shade that I have is Damage. It's supposed to be a sheer finish, and the one that I have from e.l.f. is Effortless. You guys, I think these are almost so similar. When I have them on my lips, I can't even tell which one is which. I would say though that the one from NARS is a little bit more shiny than the one from e.l.f. But honestly, if you're into a satin formula, you can skip the NARS one and just pick up the e.l.f. one, because they're both super, super beautiful. But I will say, if e.l.f. was trying to dupe the NARS, it wasn't as glossy of a formula. So that's my take on it. I love NARS lip products, so I don't know if I could give this up for this. This one's hard for me. This one's an emotional one for me. I almost feel like I can't live without my NARS lip product, but yeah, if I had to though, e.l.f. is just a great, great alternative. And honestly, the packaging is better. Like, you get more product in the e.l.f. and you also get like a magnetic close, where this one is not magnetic. It almost feels you know, kind of cheapy for the price point. It's a little strange that you get such a small bullet and it's not magnetized. That is all the dupes that I had in my collection, you guys. I didn't go out of my way to purchase anything. I know that there are a lot more dupes on the market now, both intentional and maybe some that weren't perfectly intentional, but this is what I had in my collection. These seemed like super obvious to me, and when I was gathering everything up and putting it all in a bucket, I was like, wow, like, you know, I could probably get rid of or stop spending my money on some of these high-end ones because I definitely prefer the drugstore versions just a teensy bit better. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on some of these dupes. I'd love to hear if you have any dupes in your collection and which you prefer over high-end and drugstore. That is it for me today, guys. If you're new to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing. I've been really into drugstore makeup recently, so if you like that content, please check out my channel and stick around for more drugstore and affordable makeup content. I am out of here, but I will catch you all in my next video. Bye, guys.